Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Dugan. I'm a mental health pharmacist and faculty at NeoMed. I'm presenting today's didactic, which is the next edition of the overview of dialectical behavior therapy skills. We're going to, focus on distress tolerance. Thought this was a good way to ring in September, which is National Recovery Month. And many of the individuals who walk the path of recovery have needed to master distress tolerance, but this can be a helpful skill set for individuals even who aren't in that space. As a disclaimer and reminder, this presentation is designed to provide some general information about DBT, the distress tolerance skills. I am not a certified DBT therapist. This is not designed to be a therapy session. It really is informational only. My objectives for today, we're very quickly going to just revisit the 4 categories of dialectical behavior therapy skills. Then we're going to focus on distress tolerance. What is it? What are the goals of distress tolerance skills? And then what specifically are those skills? We're going to look both at surviving a crisis as well as accepting reality. Here's our reminder, our DBT categories. Mindfulness we did last time. Distress tolerance is where we're focusing today. And then in the future, we will have a session on emotion regulation as well as interpersonal effectiveness. Let's focus on distress tolerance. So distress tolerance, why? What is this? Well, bad things happen in life, whether we have taken actions that may voluntarily lead the probability to be higher that bad things will happen, or that they just happen by chance. This does occur, and it occurs on a regular basis and is something that no human individual will be able to get away from. So trying to say that we can avoid all of the crises, all of the things that create bad experiences is unrealistic. Instead, it would be helpful to be able to manage ourselves, manage our responses when we're confronted with those situations. One thing we are not going to necessarily argue about or discuss or judge is the bad things may be perceived or actual. In some cases, the bad thing that may happen is that when I ordered coffee this morning, they ended up giving me French vanilla when I only wanted plain. And for some individuals, that may be enough for it to color the responses for the remainder of the day. Other individuals may be given very bad news. They may have an individual in their family who is incredibly ill. They may have gotten into an accident. They themselves are experiencing a massive issue with employment or with their health or in any other area of their life. So whether it's perceived or actual, for the individual, it is a crisis. It is a crisis. It is a bad series of events. And this really is focusing on how best to tolerate those particular situations. We really want to help individuals effectively manage the distress. Sometimes things can be very overwhelming. And when emotions run high, sometimes individuals can be very impulsive, and those impulsive decisions may not necessarily lead to the most effective actions. And we really want to instill some skills that can prevent subsequent decisions from leading folks down a path which may make the situation even worse. These also can help provide some strategies for when that person is feeling overwhelmed. So they're confronted with a less than ideal situation and they're completely overwhelmed with the situation. They may not feel like they have any control, and they may not truly have any control over the situation. So these are a handful of skills and tools that they'd be able to use to assist in those particular situations. So distress tolerance tools, and this can be helpful because if we practice these, if we have these readily available, even if you're not sure, the crisis has got you in a state where you can't even explain what it is that you want or need in the situation, you're able to go back to these. These are, readily accessible. They're things that are familiar to you that you'd be able to rely on. We really are going to focus on those tools that fall into two different categories. So crisis survival, getting through the particular situation that someone's confronted with, and reality acceptance, which seems like it should be easy, but sometimes it's much more difficult than what it sounds like. So recognizing those are the strategies, the goals that we're hoping to achieve with those strategies are to cope with the distress, with that difficult situation someone is confronted with, to diminish those undesirable consequences as much as possible. It doesn't say eliminate undesirable consequences, because unfortunately sometimes that is what the outcome is, but to diminish them as much as we have control over. Other goals of distress tolerance are to find a way to get to wise mind. As I mentioned, once an individual is confronted with a bad or crisis situation, sometimes it can lead to really high emotions, which may make emotion mind, from our mindfulness lecture just a couple weeks ago, we had emotion mind, rational mind, and wise mind, where rational mind was really focused on the facts. Emotional mind was making decisions based on emotions. Each of them have their place, but sometimes, especially in crisis, that may not be leading us to the best decisions. So finding a way to get back to wise mind, to really think through what some of the actions in our next steps should be. And then ultimately to reduce impulsivity. This can be very beneficial for individuals who have a very short fuse, or some of those individuals who are very emotionally responsive, who find that one thing sets them off, their emotions run real high, and it takes them a long time to return back to their baseline. So other little stressors can kind of kick them back up. We want to be able to reduce some of the impulsivity when they're confronted with some of those little insults, or not so little insults. If those are the goals, I do want to point out that there are a couple things distress tolerance does not do. It is not going to eliminate all distress. It is not going to completely make someone feel better. It is not going to make them more comfortable. It is not going to solve the situation that they're in. These are tools and skills to help the individual navigate through that particular situation. I like this particular graphic because it doesn't mean that those things aren't coming, but that we are better prepared to be able to address them and deal with them head on. So what are those skills that can help us with these situations? As I mentioned, they fall into two categories. So we have crisis survival and accepting reality. So under crisis survival, we're going to talk about each of these: self-soothing, pros and cons, wise mind accepts, improve the moment, and tip. And then under accepting reality, we have three skills. So radical acceptance, turning the mind, and willingness. So we're going to start with crisis survival. So the crisis survival skills are a set of skills that you could use in the moment when you're in the situation that is far from ideal. The first that I had listed is self-soothing. So this may be a way to make an individual feel a little bit more comfortable when they're confronted with this distressful situation. So self-soothing, uses the five senses and movement. So looking through, it often asks individuals to identify different things that they find enjoyable related to vision. What's something they may like to look at? Smell, is there a particular smell that they find somewhat relaxing or calming? Taste, hearing, touch, movement. And then once they've identified what some of those self-soothing components are, creating a self-soothe kit that is readily available. So if an individual knows that some of their distressing situations happen when they drive, and smell is a self-soother for them, maybe perhaps they have a particular scent in their car. Maybe they have aromatherapy spray that's available in their car, or hand sanitizer using that scent, but something they would be able to activate when they're confronted with that distressing situation. It's encouraged that everyone really think about what it is that helps them self-soothe, so that they have those things kind of front of mind for when they're confronted with a situation that is very much less than ideal, that really puts them in a high emotional situation. I put the picture of the little girl with the pillow and the blanket. For some individuals, touch may be a fuzzy blanket or a weighted blanket, something that they have readily available that they'd be able to kind of curl up and be in a environment that seems much more calming or much safer than where they had been previously when they started experiencing those emotions. So that's one set of things that an individual can do to cope with the crisis that they're confronted with. Another is called pros and cons. So identifying when you're in the crisis situation, what are those urges that you have to act? So if you're confronted with this particular situation, is your urge to yell at this person? Is it to be physically aggressive? Is it to run away? Is it to shut down? Identify what those urges are, and then evaluate the pros and cons. What would be a good thing about acting on that urge? What might be a drawback for acting on that urge? And then vice versa, doing the same thing for resisting or avoiding that urge. So what would be a good thing if I don't yell at this person? What might be a bad thing if I don't yell at that person? That one may take some time, and it may be difficult for some folks to do in the heat of the moment. This may be something that they need to practice after the fact initially, really process a situation that they just had and start to do the pros and cons of, okay, this is what happened. What might be a good or bad if we did something differently, and build those skills so that they're able to do it when they are in the heat of the moment. Not all of these are going to fit for every person. I think this is a really good example. There are some people, when they are in that heat of the moment and confronted with a crisis, their mind is going in so many different directions, they may not be able to do this right then. So again, maybe something that they use afterward, but maybe that's not their main go-to, their knee-jerk, hey, this is the tool I'm going to pull out first. So trying different things on, we have a few other options that we can use as well. So the next one in crisis survival is called Wise Mind Accepts. So the A standing for activities. This one really focuses on trying to get to wise mind by doing some degree of distraction, getting you no longer focused just on the crisis that is confronting the individual. So engaged in activities that are beneficial, that are enjoyable, that are pleasant, that may be calming for that particular person. Again, thinking about what those activities may be. Maybe an individual likes to do crossword puzzles or word searches. So having some of those books available or games available on their phone so that they're readily accessible when they need them. Contributing, maybe contributing to the benefit of someone else. Again, thinking ahead and planning ahead, trying to identify what might be some things that I know that I can do in the event that I get in this situation. So if they have neighbors, for example, that have little kids or that might be older, that you could go out and play. We have chalk in many kids in the neighborhood. So if you enjoy art and drawing, that could be something that's readily available so that you could go contribute and do something for someone else. Comparisons. So providing a comparison, keeping in mind where you are, that there may be individuals who are less fortunate or who have a more difficult situation from you. This is one that I do think for some people that can be helpful, more as a gut check to be like, okay, yeah, things are bad. They could be worse. So I do need to kind of ground myself a little bit and keep that in perspective. But for some other people, that comparison may not be real beneficial because then that'll lead to multiple other comparisons that may escalate their angst and distress in the crisis. Emotions, so identifying the emotion that an individual has and then intentionally trying to move it to something different, to a different emotion. It may not, if you're very distressed or angry, full joy may not be where you're going. So finding some of the emotions that you would be able to shift to could be helpful to kind of help keep that somewhat contained and keep it from really escalating. Pushing away, so pushing away some of the things that are causing distress at this point. Again, looking at a little bit of the distractions can be helpful in the short term. thoughts, intentionally moving your thoughts to just on what you're focused on here, or moving your thoughts to something else, something that's relaxing, something that's calming, and moving them away from what it is that's distressing. And then sensation. So really focusing on the senses, kind of alluding back to that self-soothe. So being attentive to the sensations that are in the body and potentially trying to change some of those sensations, especially if there's a lot of tension or angst. If their muscles are really tight, trying to do some relaxation in changing what some of those sensations are, to change the input, to potentially change what some of those, what the experience is, and then what some of the decisions are as they're confronted with the situation. Another, so there are two left in crisis survival. So improve the moment. Also a mnemonic. So imagery, meaning, prayer, relaxation, one thing in the moment, vacation, encouragement. As you'll see, this one is a little bit similar to the Wise Mind Accepts. So imagery, imagining something that's relaxing or calming, meaning, finding or creating meaning about the situation that they're in. And that can be really hard to find in the moment, but it can be helpful for some individuals to know that, okay, I realize that there's a bigger picture and there's a reason I need to go through this, and that'll benefit me later on. Prayer, if there is any type of higher power, any denomination, however prayer may look for the person, may be helpful. This also could be just turning it over to a higher power or the powers that be, the forces of nature, can be really beneficial for some individuals so they don't feel like they're holding everything. Relaxation, however relaxation looks to them, taking a bath, getting in the hot tub, stretching, meditation, doing yoga, anything that they need to do that they find relaxing, reading a book, playing a game. One thing in the moment, so really encouraging them to be mindful and focus only on the present moment. Sometimes when folks are in crisis, they may be overwhelmed by everything that's going on, and they're only looking at the big picture, and they don't even know where to start or what place to hold on to. So focusing just on the now, it can be helpful to bring things back to a more manageable standpoint. Take a vacation, whether literally or figuratively. They need to take a walk, just change their scenery, get to a different room, maybe a different household. If they're at work, maybe going home. If they're at home, going somewhere that they enjoy, a park, another community location, or just imagining. So maybe they're unable to get away from the location that you're in. Maybe you're in crisis and you're at work and you can't leave. So taking a few minutes to imagine. When I was on my honeymoon in Jamaica with my husband, we would stand out on the balcony and look at the beach and the water. And the one thing that he had said was, we need to remember this is always here. So no matter how stressful things get, that's one of the places that I imagine, because that's always there. And that place still exists even if I'm not, not down there in the Caribbean. So that's another way that they can take a vacation, even if they physically can't get away. The last one is encouragement. So making sure that there's a positive narrative that's ongoing. So have them be their own cheerleader. This is difficult, but you're going to get through this. You are doing okay. We're doing the best that we can right now, and we're managing. We're being successful. We were able to deal with this before. We can absolutely do it again. Whatever they need to say is their mantra to encourage themselves to keep moving forward. The last one in crisis survival skills can be very useful when emotions are running really, really high for an individual. So this one is called the TIP skills. So T for temperature, I for intense exercise, P for paced breathing, and P for progressive relaxation. So if an individual is incredibly distressed, sometimes changing the temperature can really help them manage those emotions. Those emotions may seem like they're completely out of control, and they're unable to wrangle them, change them, get them back into a more manageable standpoint. Using cold water, ice cold water, ice cubes can be incredibly helpful. Sometimes individuals will be encouraged to lay on the floor like a starfish, so arms and legs out, so that they have more contact, especially with shorts or short sleeve shirts on, as the tile floors do tend to be a little bit cooler. If they're laying in the sun on a carpet, that may not be quite as helpful. We really are looking for that cold sensation. Washing their face, running their hands or their wrists under cold water. Ice cubes, having them hold ice cubes. They can rub them in different places, including on their wrist, to try to get that cold sensation, which can be really helpful to reset. It also gives them something to focus on. Intense exercise, so this may not be appropriate for all patients, but if those emotions are running high, have them do something of high intensity. It does not need to go for a long period of time. This could be yoga, in challenging yoga poses. It might be stretching, it might be running, it might be biking, weightlifting. With weightlifting, we do want to make sure that they don't get too carried away and injure themselves. So that one should have some degree of supervision, but something that they do for a short period of time to really help release some of that pent-up energy that they have. Peace breathing can be helpful. This can be done with no one even knowing that they're doing this. And it can be done in a number of different ways. Sometimes it's box breathing. So breathing in, holding, breathing out, holding for the same count, a count of 2, a count of 4. When some folks are really distressed, they may not be able to initially start at a 4. So having them start at a smaller number can be completely fine. The other thing they can do is inhale for a shorter time than they exhale. So if they inhale for a count of 3, try exhaling for a count of 4 or 5. That does help activate the parasympathetic nervous system and can help kind of reset and calm things down just a little bit. The last is progressive relaxation. So really focusing on the physical sensations in the body and then tensing everything up, making everything really tight, contracted, as tense as possible, and slowly, intentionally relaxing. Oftentimes they recommend going in a systematic way, starting at the head and going to the feet, or starting at the feet and relaxing all the way up. For me, it's easier to go up to down, but there are some folks that like to go from their feet all the way up. All of those can be helpful. It doesn't have to only be used when emotions are high, but this is one of the interventions that can be really helpful if somebody does tend to have really intense emotions that happen quickly. So all of those are different skills and techniques that can help an individual get through the moment. So they're confronted with a crisis, we're just getting through the situation. The other piece is the accepting reality. The crisis is the crisis. It has confronted them. And taking a vacation or doing something else isn't necessarily going to make that situation go away. So it often is important to be able to accept what is happening. And this may be really difficult. So one of the techniques that can be used is called radical acceptance. My daughter absolutely hates this one. This is her least favorite DBT skill. So radical acceptance is acknowledging and accepting reality as it is. And I use the graphic of a tree because I really believe this is something that people need to nurture and grow into. I think, at least from the folks that I've talked to, it doesn't seem to be something that comes naturally to most people. There are a select few, and if you're one of them, I am jealous of you. But for the rest of us, it's something that we need to work on, that we need to build up. So there are 2 pieces to it. The first is radical, the fact that this is complete, total, 100% acceptance. So we are accepting the whole thing. We're not only just taking bits and pieces of this. And acceptance is seeing reality for what it is, not what we want it to be, not what I think it should be, but for what the situation is right now. So I completely accept the fact that this is the situation. It does not mean that I have to like it, and we're going to talk about that on the next on the next slide, but I at least accept that this is what it is. I may not be able to change this. There was a car accident. I was injured. Maybe I'm unable to, which is not good because we're going to be traveling today, but if there was an accident and somebody's injured and maybe they're going to be in a wheelchair or on crutches for a short period of time, they may not like that situation, but accepting the fact that it happened and it can't be changed can be really beneficial as they start to then work through that. Not always easy. The other, one of the other techniques in accepting reality can be used with radical acceptance. So this one is called turning the mind. So it's recognizing that acceptance is a choice. So it provides some empowerment in a situation where people often feel very powerless. So the situation happened, you accepted it, but likely you're going to revisit that choice. They often describe turning the mind as being at a fork in the road. You have the choice whether you turn your mind to accept the situation as it is. You don't have to like it, but you accept that this is the situation that can't be changed, or you reject it. So either one, you're going to pick one or the other, but you have the choice of which one you pick. And likely you'll be reconfronted with this choice on a number of occasions. So you have the power to continue to make that choice. So again, trying to give some empowerment back so individuals don't feel like this whole situation is totally outside of my control and there's nothing I can do about it. It does lead them to see, okay, I can accept what's going on, or I can try to fight against it, and here are things that may occur. The last skill in accepting reality is called willingness. So there are two columns of statements. On the left-hand side is willfulness, and on the right-hand side is willingness. So willfulness is things like refusing to tolerate a situation. So that rejection. I am not going to, it's not what I want. It's not what I think should happen. I'm not going to accept this. Trying to change a situation that can't be changed. If there was an accident and a bone was broken, you can't change that. You can't miraculously have that bone grow back together. This could be, one of the examples is called the terrible twos. So no, like unable to really get past this one particular point. And then doing the opposite of doing what works. So you're not doing what works. You're really kind of stuck in this one particular situation, kind of like an animal that may, like our little donkey down here, that's being a little bit stubborn. So really kind of being stuck in this situation where I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to try to change things that can't be changed. And individuals there can really kind of get stuck in a cycle where they're just going back and forth through the distress of that particular situation. Willingness is going to be allowing, oh, hold on. Sorry about that. So willingness is allowing the world to be as it is and to participate in it fully. So that radical acceptance piece, as well as turning the mind. So as I've come back to it, I do accept the situation. I'm going to do what needs to be done. I may not like it. I may not think this is what should be happening, but this is what needs to happen in this particular situation. I'm not going to do more. I'm not going to do less. I'm just going to do what needs to be done. Willingness is making sure that we're confronting wise mind, so that the emotions aren't really driving the vehicle, that we're checking the facts and making sure that the emotions as well as the reason are both weighing in on what our decisions and next steps are going to be. Willingness also may be asking, what is the threat? So what is it that is so distressing about this situation that I keep getting stuck on? I'm willing to talk about kind of the bigger picture, those other things that may be really problematic. So maybe this is what I'm saying is an issue, but as I look at the threat, maybe that's something slightly different. So really trying to have that be a little bit more open and open-minded and willing to explore things a bit more. All three of those accepting reality skills are somewhat tied together and really help with, this is the situation as it is. How do we then start to move past it? It often has to be used in conjunction with those crisis survival skills at multiple steps to get through that situation, but all of them can be used at different times and often need to be practiced, because if we're only trying to use them when it's a crisis situation, it may not be something we're easily able to draw upon and utilize. So those are our distress tolerance skills. Just in summary, distress tolerance skills are to help one survive a crisis and accept the situation, not to solve the situation, not to make pain and distress go away completely, but to make it much more manageable so that decisions can be made that are helping people continue to move in a direction that's ideal for them, that moves them toward their goals. We've got our crisis survival as well as our accepting reality skills, and most of them are going to require a little bit of practice. So thank you for your time, and I will stop our recording.